Thank you very much for being here, especially after lunch. This is a joint work with my boss, Ed Felten, with Akaki Mamagaishvili and Benny Sudakov. So I'd like to start with a very, very oversimplified background on layer 2 blockchains that operate on top of Ethereum. So layer 2s are a scaling solution for layer 1 blockchains like Ethereum, which aim to solve layer 1's limited throughput problem. So a standard layer 2 is a blockchain. It will receive and process a sequence of transactions, and each transaction, after it's executed, it will update the state of the layer 2. And every once in a while, the current state of the L2 will be posted onto a proving protocol on the underlying L1, with the goal of convincing the L1 that the state which was posted is really the true result of the computation. And so the main idea is to increase the limited throughput of Ethereum by offloading the expensive execution off of Ethereum and using Ethereum only to record and verify that the computation proceeded correctly. So here in this picture, these orange squares are sort of the intermediate states for the result of these subsequences of transactions, and only they will be posted onto Ethereum at some rate. So on Arbitrum, for example, this posting will happen roughly once an hour. And of course, the main challenge in such a system is how to convince Ethereum that the posted state is indeed valid. And we would like for this to happen in a permissionless way, where everyone can sort of participate in proving to Ethereum that the state is correct. So today there are two main approaches for doing this. There's the ZK rollup approach, which I will not talk about, and there's the optimistic rollup approach, which is the focus of this project. So the proving mechanism of an optimistic rollup works roughly as follows. Any interested party can post what their claim on the state is, and when they post their claim, they will also post some deposit to the contract, which will get slashed if they lose the challenge, and I'll get to that. And so if enough time passes and only one claim on the correct state was submitted, then it will be deemed to be correct and it will be confirmed. Otherwise, if there is more than one claim, then there will be a dispute, which will be resolved with an interactive game or protocol, which is executed on the L1. And this interactive protocol is governed by a set of smart contracts on Ethereum, and it is usually called a fraud proof or a dispute resolution protocol. And so what will happen is that the disagreeing parties will submit moves alternately, and each such move is a transaction to this L1 smart contract, which will sort of reduce the dispute in a recursive manner. And after enough moves have been processed, one of the claims will be confirmed as the winner, and all the other participants will have their deposits slashed. And this has the all these fraud proofs today have the appealing property that the honest party that submitted the correct state is guaranteed to win if, and this is a very big if, all the honest moves were indeed processed by the L1 smart contract that governs the fraud proof. So, as I said, the moves in the fraud proof protocol are L1 transactions, which means that they're prone to censorship, which in this context is defined as any malicious activity which is intended to delay or exclude that transaction's inclusion in the blockchain in Ethereum. And in the fraud-proof context, censorship of honest moves means that the honest party will not be able to sort of advance the game toward resolution. And so the honest claim will not get confirmed. And this is, of course, very, very bad for the security of the optimistic rollup. And so to mitigate against this censorship problem, the major fraud-proof systems today provide participants with a large time window, which is essentially like a chess countdown clock, to have all the required moves processed on chain. And if that that countdown clock reaches 0, then that party loses and it's disqualified from the game. And this time window is usually called the challenge period. And so today, this is set to about 1 week in the major optimistic rollups, base arbitrum optimism. And this is mainly aimed against a specific type of censorship attack, which is called a strong censorship attack, whereby the attacker is assumed to be super powerful, that it controls more than 50% of the L1 stake, in which case it just has full control over which blocks are added or not added to the canonical chain. And there are social reasons for why this 1 week was decided. But other forms of censorship are possible, and it is not clear exactly how the challenge period defends against the other types of censorship. So this brings me to the topic of this work, where we consider economic censorship attacks, which exploit the fact that for any given L1 block, there is a block proposer which has just complete control over what the contents of the block are, and in this context, whether the fraud-proof move of the honest party will be or will not be included. And so the idea is that attacker will try to bribe the block proposer to censor the defender's move. So just to be a bit more concrete, if, say, the defender or the honest party will offer the proposer an inclusion tip of P, then a bribe B by the attacker will be successful if P is smaller than B. Then the proposer will accept the bribe. And so if the attacker bribes some block proposer, what does this mean? It means that the defender doesn't get his current move on chain, so his time, this countdown clock is ticking, and his time to get to victory decreases, but the attacker spent funds for this attack, and so his budget for future attacks is decreased. But if the attacker doesn't bribe, then on the one hand, the defender is one step closer to victory, but the defender's budget because the defender paid an inclusion tip, so his budget also decreases. And so our goals in this project is sort of to understand the dynamics of how such attacks will proceed. We want to understand what strategies the players will use, how much to bid in every round, depending on the current situation in the game. What are the optimal strategies? We want to understand ultimately who is expected to win, given the current parameters of the game. And ultimately, we want to understand what are the implications for optimistic rollup security, and what does this say about the challenge period and the design of optimistic rollups in general. So to this end, we analyze a very stylized multi-round game between an attacker, Alice, a defender, Daria, and the block proposers. These are all players in the game. And the game is parameterized by these 4 parameters initially. So this will be big T. It's the total number of rounds. This corresponds to the challenge period length, where you can think of each round as being an Ethereum block where the defender wants to submit his next move in the game. Big N is the number of rounds that the defender needs to win in order to sort of win the entire fraud-proof game. A is Alice's budget for the attack, and D is Daria's budget for the defense. And we study 3 variants of the game, which differ in how a specific round is conducted. And the main question that we want to understand is how large does Alice's budget for the attack needs to be relative to Daria's budget as a function of the parameters of the game, such that Alice can guarantee victory the entire game. So with this in mind, I want to explain the first variant of the game. We call this the G1 game, and this is the simplest model that just models a world with alternating rational single block proposers. And so this is how a round is conducted. Daria will offer a bid B, which is upper bounded by her budget. This is sort of how much she offers the proposer for including her transaction. Then the attacker, we assume conservatively that the attacker will then observe the bid and will offer a counter bid B prime, which is also upper bounded by attacker's current budget. Alice will win the round if and only if B is at most B prime, so tie breaking goes towards Alice. and the round winner will get her budget deducted by an amount equal to the bid, and then a new round begins. And so notice that we treat the block proposer as completely myopic here. So the block proposer sort of just plays once in his current block. And this makes, the intuition for this is that there's so many block proposers and the game is short enough that we sort of assume that each proposer participates in one round of the game. So this brings us to our first result, which says that in this game, as I presented, Alice can guarantee victory if and only if t minus n plus 1 over n times d, d again is the defender's budget, is at most a. So notice that the larger the challenge period is, the more funds Alice needs to use or to bring to bring for this purpose in order to guarantee victory. And this sort of aligns with our intuition that the larger the challenge period is, the safer the optimistic roll-up is. Okay, and I would like to go over the simple proof of this, and I'll just go over the if direction. So let's assume that this inequality holds, and I want to prove that Alice can indeed guarantee victory. So what will Alice do? So this is Alice's strategy. In any given round, she will notice Daria's bid. If Daria bid more than d over n, then she will just let Daria win the round. Otherwise, she will match Daria's bid, and therefore Alice will win the round, because we assume tie-breaking goes towards Alice. And so the observation here is that Daria cannot win the entire game since she doesn't have enough budget, but Alice does have enough budget to win her required number of rounds, which is t minus n plus 1. So this is the first result. And so this is a very stylized sort of interaction. There are, of course, in real life, many other factors that come here, but still just to give a flavor of what this means in practice if we plug in real world numbers. So today, for the example of Arbitrum, today, well, depending on the day you check, Arbitrum secures roughly $10 billion worth of assets. And so in the extreme case, this will be the attacker's budget for this game, or at least this is an upper bound. And in bold, which is Arbitrum's fraud-proof system, the number of required moves is around 60, and the challenge period is 1 week, which is translates to about 50,000 Ethereum blocks. And so if we plug in these numbers, then the defender will be able to guarantee victory if it has at least $12 million. So this sounds like a lot of money. And so the next step is how do we refine this model to maybe get better results? So to this end, we study the next variant, which we call G1 sub k, where here k is a constant parameter, which is larger than 1. And this game proceeds exactly like the previous game that I described, but in addition to the regular rounds from before, there are also rounds that are special. And a special round is conducted exactly like a regular round, but here the attacker, in order to win, it needs to outbid the defender by at least a factor of k, where again k is larger than 1. So in these special rounds, it is harder for the attacker to win the round. And we also assume that both the players, the attacker and defender, know the configuration of the regular and special rounds. So they know in advance which of the rounds will be special and which will be regular. So this sounds a bit strange. So I want to explain the motivation for these special rounds. Where do they come from? So the regular rounds, you can think of them as modeling like a MEV boost round where I'm not going to go more into that, but the regular rounds are sort of the more intuitive, I would say. But today, for the special rounds, it is estimated that around 2% of the L1 proposers just rely on the default vanilla block building software, which is offered by the execution clients. And this algorithm will basically the proposer will just sort the transactions from the mempool that it knows about by decreasing order of priority fee per gas, and it will include the transactions in the block in this order as long as there's still room in the block. So why is this relevant for us? So today a bold, again, I'm from Arbitrum, so this is the example I'm talking about. So today a bold transaction takes about, 500,000 gas, and the gas limit, at least as of when this slide was written, it has grown since then. The gas limit was 30 million gas. And so if the attacker wants to censor a bold transaction, when the proposer uses this vanilla software, it will need to submit around 29.5 million gas worth of transactions with a higher priority fee than what the bold transaction submitter sent. And so if the attack succeeds in this round, the attacker will pay 59 times as much as the defender would have paid in priority fees. And so this is where the special round comes from. So K will equal 59 for this example. So, for the interest of time, I'm not going to go exactly on the analysis of what we did here, but basically here I'm explaining how we analyze. Remember that our goal is basically to calculate by how much Alice's budget need to be relative to Daria's in order to win. And so what we wanted to do is like we found, in the same way that we found like a closed form, nice algebraic formula for the winning condition for Alice, that's what we tried to do here, but the math was too complicated and we couldn't find a closed form formula. So we were able to find a sort of recurrence relation that describes what the threshold ratio between Alice and Daria's budget is, which will allow Alice to win. And so we have like a recursive formula for calculating that, and because it's given by a recursive formula, then we can also compute it with a dynamic programming algorithm. And so, again, this curly A here, this is the ratio between Alice and Daria's budget, such that if the ratio is higher than that, then Alice can guarantee victory. And so if we do the calculation of that, which all the details of which can be found in the paper, then we find that compared to the $12 million that the defender needed in the naive original version of the game, here the defender only needs $5.6 million. And if we do the math where we increase the gas limit from the 30 millions that it was back then to 36 or however much it is today, then this will only be better and better for the defender. So additional results. What we show, in addition to calculating this recursive relation, we show that in the regime where t plus s is much, much larger than n, which is the regime that we find in practice, then the defender's simple strategy of constantly beating d over n will converge to the performance of the optimal strategy. And this is very nice because this simple strategy does not take into account the configuration of special and regular rounds. And so, like there was an assumption in the game I described where the players know when rounds will be special or not, which is not very realistic. But what this additional result tells us is that we can sort of ignore that assumption, and which means that this simple strategy will also be approximately optimal in a randomized variant of the game where the players don't know in advance which of the blocks will be built by a vanilla proposer, but actually each round will be special with some probability, say 2%, as I said before, and the rounds are IID. And so this is sort of more fits reality in practice. Okay, so I'm going to skip this for the sake of time and just go to the final slide. So I want to just talk a bit about future work and maybe the drawbacks of the model I discussed. So today in bold, the attacker today can effectively increase n, so n is the number of required moves for the defender, by becoming a new party in the fraud proof and placing a new stake or deposit in the fraud proof protocol. And so here we assume that this n is fixed, but I think it will be super interesting to understand how the ability of the attacker to increase n and pay money will affect the results. And also, the bids and the budgets of the players in the model we analyzed only capture really the priority fees that go to the proposer, and not the base fee, which is burned and the proposer doesn't care about the base fee. And so how does the base fee affect the dynamics? So for example, the attacker, if there are lots of sort of consecutive special rounds, and the attacker will not be able to sustain censorship for many consecutive rounds because of the AAP 1559 behavior. So how will that affect the results? I think that is also very interesting. Yeah, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. We have some time for a couple of questions. If anybody has a question, I'll pass the mic around.
Yeah, so did you consider the effect of introducing inclusion lists into the proposer mechanism?
Yes.
These thresholds?
Yes, the third variant that I didn't discuss is a variant with multiple proposers, where anyone has an inclusion list, and if the transaction appears in one of them, then it will be included in the block. Just in one sentence, we show that the state of affairs becomes better by a factor of the number of proposers for the defender. There it's a more like intricate analysis of what the proposers will do, like their behavior is more interesting in that scenario. Yeah, we also talk about that in the paper.
Oh, yeah.
More technical question. You assumed that the proposer rotation doesn't repeat in your analysis. Where was that used?
Well, in a round, I said that the proposer will basically, if the bribe is bigger than what the defender offers, then it will take the bribe. So this is like basically it's if the proposer behaves like that, it means that it only cares about the current profit that it can make from this round. I did want to add another bullet. Now thank you for reminding me to this future work, because in reality. So for example, Coinbase, I learned this about a month ago or 2 months ago, controls about 8% of the Ethereum stake today. And so we can assume in this model that 8% of the rounds will be controlled by the same proposer, which will make him more interested in the future rounds and not just the current round. I think that's also interesting to incorporate here.
Thank you.
I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions.
I'll just shout if it's okay.
Yeah, sure.
If the attacker doesn't actually want to win, they just want to grief you, can they do it? Or like how badly?
So that's a good question. Basically, let me say like this: the only thing we care about here is like the 1 bit of the defender wins or the attacker wins. That's the only thing we care about. And if the defender deviates from his optimal strategy in any way, that just means that the winning condition for the attacker is better for the attacker. So I think it's all basically if the defender deviates, then the inequality that shows the threshold, it gets worse for him. And yeah, it's a 1-bit sort of thing that I cared about, is whether the defender wins the entire thing or, so yeah, that's all I can say at the moment.
We unfortunately don't have time for any more questions. I'd like to thank the speaker again.